Then the next section is called في سبب عودة الغفلة والقسوة إلى القلب بعد انقضاء الموعظة. Right. So next he wants to talk about why. Why is it that when people hear lectures, they hear admonitions, they hear some type of spiritual insight, that people quickly resort back to heedlessness? And why is it that people's hearts become hard after they hear things that impress them, right? First and foremost. And so he says, قد يعرض عند سماع المواعظ للسامع يقظة فإذا انفصل عن مجلس الذكر عادت القسوة والغفلة. So it says, so sometimes it happens that when someone is listening to a lecture, that a state of awakeness appears over that person. But the moment the assembly of dhikr, it stops, the person's original state returns, which is a state of hard-heartedness and heedlessness. فتدبرت السبب في ذلك فعرفته ثم رأيت الناس يتفاوتون في ذلك. So then I reflected upon, okay, why is this that happen? So I reflected and I thought about, okay, why is it this that happens? And then I realized that I understood why it happens. And as a result of it, I noticed that there actually were people are varying levels, varying degrees with respect to the matter of why they become heedless or return to heedlessness after hearing something which is so beneficial for the soul. Now, of course, we are in the month of Ramadan, and the month of Ramadan teaches us the importance of us seeking that which is most important, which is the reward in the hereafter, closeness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That the fast, of course, has physical benefits, but it's really about the spiritual benefits. This is what we're concerned with. We're concerned with the spiritual benefits of the fast, and because that is what it lives on after we pass away. As a hadith that the Prophet mentioned, that every time a person dies, they're only behind three things. One is a knowledge that people benefit from. Secondly, is a sadaqah jariyah, a sort of a flowing or continuous charity. And then thirdly, waladun salihun yad'ulah, a righteous child that prays for them, right? So this is all that you leave this world with, and that's the most important thing. And so here's, okay, well, people of different states, you hear the lecture, you hear the admonition, you hear the scolding, perhaps even, right? So what happens? So people are different states. فحالة العامة أن القلب لا يكون على صفته من يقظة عند سماع موعظة وبعدها لسببين. So he said that two fundamental reasons why people's hearts don't remain in the state of awareness that they are when they first hear some type of special spiritual insight. أحدهما أن المواعظ كالسياط والسياط لا تؤلم بعد انقضائها إلامها وقت وقوعها. He said the first reason is because lectures are like whips, right? So when you're hit with the whip, now of course you remember the pain it strikes you at that moment, and so the pain that you feel at the moment it strikes you is not the same as it is once it's over, right? So once okay, whip, super, it hurts at that moment, and then now it starts to subside. So that's the first reason why people become heedless. And then he said ثاني أن حالة سماع المواعظ يكون الإنسان فيها مزاح العلة قد تخلى بجسمه وفكره عن أسباب الدنيا وأنصت بحضور قلبه فإذا عاد إلى الشواغل استجذبته بآفاتها فكيف يصح أن يكون كما كان. So the second reason is that the state of the person, or the state of hearing spiritual insights, at that particular moment when this happens, the individual is free of any distractions, right? So first he said, okay, it's because it's like a whip. And they said second, because at that moment you hear that you are free of distractions, you're very focused, right? You're focused, your heart is in it, your ears are in it, everything is part of it. So he said, tabarakallah, that was an incredible lecture, incredible talk, incredible lesson today, right? So it's like at that moment, it's like, well, you're free of distractions, right? Like most of us are in Ramadan, alhamdulillah, especially on the weekends. So it's that, well, and so, but then once the distractions return, then naturally it takes us back into the state of ghafla, a state of heedlessness. And this is a state of the entire of all humanity, that no one escapes this. Everyone falls into this situation. إلا أن أرباب اليقظة يتفاوتون في بقاء الأثر. Except that those who are awake, those who are alert, they are of differing degrees of wakefulness with respect to the retention of the effects of that spiritual lesson. فمنهم من يعزم بلا تردد ويمضي من غير التفات فلو توقف بهم ركب الطبع لضجوا كما قال حنظلة عن نفسه نافق حنظلة. Right? So among them are those who have resolve, and they themselves do not hesitate, and they act right away, immediately. Once they hear the lesson, they hear the spiritual insight, they take it, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created their souls in such a way where they themselves, they can immediately incorporate this particular lesson into their lives, and even to the extent that if at any particular moment they feel that their nature is sort of changing, right, and they're becoming heedless, they clamor as a result of it, right, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made their anfus, their souls of this particular state, in the same way that Hanzala al-Usaidi, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the companion, said, Nafaqa Hanzala, oh Ya Rasulullah, Hanzala is guilty of hypocrisy. And so the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam asked Hanzala, and how so? How is that, Hanzala? He said, Ya Rasulullah, when we're with you, and we hear the mau'idah, we hear the spiritual insights, we hear the lectures, we hear everything that we need to do in order to get success in the hereafter. It's like we see it right with our eyes. It's like everything's right there before us, and it's completely 100% real. But the moment we leave, we find ourselves falling back into heedlessness, right? And so the Prophet responds to Alhamdulillah, tells him that if you were to remain upon this state, then the angels would come and they would shake your hands as you walk down the roads, right? So this is, again, the state that many people seek, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us a taste of that. Then he goes on, وَمِنْهُمْ أَقْوَامٌ يَمِيلُ بِهِمْ الطَّبْعُ إِلَى غَفْلَةِ أَحْيَانًا وَيَدْعُوهُمْ مَا تَقَدَّمَ مِنْ مَوَاعِظِ إِلَى عَمْرِ أَحْيَانًا فَهُمْ كَالسُّنْبُلُةِ تَمِيلُهَا الرِّيَاحُ. So the first state is the individual, of course, they become, they're disciplined, right? The first people are disciplined people. They hear the spiritual insight, they put it into practice immediately, and they never stop, right, doing it. A second type of person is one who hears it, and their soul or their nature inclines them towards heedlessness. Sometimes they fall into ghuflah, and so those particular moments of spiritual insight and lecture, they inspire them to do good works sometimes. Excuse me. And then at other times they abandon the works. And so he said that these are like the sumbura. There's like the a crop of wheat or something which is being hit by the winds. The winds move them, and the stalks, right? Like, I'm sorry, this word I was looking for, stalk, like the stalks of wheat, being moved by the winds. So in other words, wherever the wind pushes you, that's where you go. If the wind pushes you towards good, you do the good. If the wind pushes you away from good, then you abandon the good. And so then lastly, he said, وَأَقْوَامٌ لَا يَأْثِرُ فِيهِمْ إِلَّا بِمِقْدَارِ سَمَاعِهِ كَمَاءٍ دَحْرَجْتَهُ عَلَى صَفْوَانٍ. And then there's a third type of person, and we ask Allah that He protect us from being this type of person. He says, these are people that no effect comes to them from the spiritual insights that they hear. It's just like they just hear it and that's it. And it's like water that is pouring on the top of a smooth rock, right? And the water just flows right off, right? So there's, of course, the state that we don't want to be in naturally. So then after this, he talks about, okay, all right, well, what is it? So if, distraction happens, we are led into heedlessness. And we led into heedlessness either one because when we first hear the spiritual insight, then it's like a whip, right? And so it affects us immediately, but then we become sort of lax afterwards, and then secondly, he says is because, fundamentally, the second reason was basically that that we are free, right? And you're free of any distraction. This is what leads you to um, actually pay attention to the insight. But then once the distractions return, then you go back to your heedlessness, right? But he says, okay, what are the things from the dunya that attracts us and makes us heedless, right? So الطبع بين جواذب الدنيا وذكر الآخرة, right? So he talk about, okay, the human nature, the nature of the human being, the nature of the human soul, between the things that attract one to the dunya and remembrance of the hereafter, right? So جواذب الطبع إلى الدنيا كثيرة. So the things that actually gravitate us towards the dunya are many. ثم هي من داخل. Then he says, and those things that attract us towards the dunya are things that are internal to ourselves, our souls. وذكر الآخرة أمر خارج عن الطبع من خارج. And the thing, remembrance of the hereafter, is something, a matter that is external to our internal nature, right? In other words, he basically saying that, okay, well, if we want dunya because we are being sort of, it's part of who we are, that we've been wired to want dunya, right? But the akhirah is something external to our internal state. And so this itself makes it even much more of a challenge, right? Because we want something that our souls are not immediately attracted to. Right? So how do you make your souls attracted to those things? So he said, وَرُبَّمَا ظَنَّ مَنْ لَا عِلْمَ لَهُ أَنَّ جَوَاذِبَ الْآخِرَةِ أَقْوَى لِمَا يَسْمَعُ مِنَ وَعِيدِ فِي الْقُرْآنِ. He said, it sometimes happens that those who have no knowledge, they think that the things that attract one to the hereafter are actually stronger because of the threats he finds or hears mentioned in the Quran. Well, he said, but this is not so. This is not the case, right? So in other words, someone may assume, okay, well, if I hear about the hellfire, then that's probably one going to make me not want to go to the hellfire. And he said, sure, you don't want to go to the hellfire. No one wants to go to the hellfire, but how immediate and how imminent is the danger of the hellfire, right, to the average one of us? Right? It's not immediate. It's not imminent at all, right, unless you're on your deathbed, right? وليس كذلك لأن مثل الطبع في ميله إلى الدنيا كالماء الجاري فإنه يطلب الهبوط وإنما رفعه إلى فوق يحتاج إلى تكلف ولهذا أجاب معاون الشرع بالترغيب والترهيب يقوي جند العقل. So he says, because the reason, so this is not the case. It is not the case that the things that attract one to the hereafter are stronger than the things that attract us to this world, because the similitude of one's nature and its inclination towards the dunya is like running water. It's like running water. So what happens to water? What does water do? Water, it actually pursues a decline, right? In other words, water runs downhill, right? It runs downhill. And if you want water to be elevated, it's going to require a certain amount of effort and energy in order to get it to go up the hill, right? So basically, he said that this is what the soul is like. The soul is like running water. The soul goes down, and in order to get the soul to go up, you have to push hard. You have to work hard to get it to go up. And for this particular reason, he says the aids of the revealed law, they respond to this particular challenge by encouraging us and discouraging us in such a way that it strengthens the forces of the intellect, forces of aql, jundul aql, or the soldier, or the soldier of the intellect, or the forces of the intellect. In other words, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will tell us, if you do this, you get this reward. You do this one good deed, you'll get 10 good deeds. You do some good deeds, you get 700 good deeds for. And some good deeds, there's no limit to how many rewards you get for those good deeds. Allah tells you about Jannah. He tells you about the water of Jannah. Talk about the things that you drink in Jannah. There's wine, there's honey, there's milk, there's, etc., and other types of delights that I mentioned about Jannah. In Tarhib, he tells you about also the type of drinks that exist in the hellfire, right? What sort of things do people drink in the hellfire? Extremely cold drinks, which, ghislin and others, which some describe blood and pus and other just very nasty, and gross things that you're told that and then you don't have a good environment, that is sometimes too hot, sometimes it's too cold. You don't have i'tidal, a sort of moderate temperature in Jahannam, right? So targhib with tarhib. So why does Allah do that? In order to strengthen the force of the intellect, right? Because the human being is aql, and we are shahwa, that we are intellect and we are lust, right? And in order to strengthen, but we're unlike the animals, so we're like the angels in that we have rationality, right? And so, but the angels don't have lust. We're like the lower animals in that we have lust, but they don't have aql, right? So the human being is the only creature that has this one characteristic we call sabr, which is temperance, or we can call patience, right? Why? Because when you're sick, what do? You go to the doctor to see the doctor, and the doctor recommends or prescribes for you some medicine. You don't really want to drink the medicine, right? Because why? Because your nature doesn't sort of approve of it. It doesn't, find it to be tasty, right? But your aql says, you know what? In order for me to get better and improve, I have to take this medicine, or I have to eat well, I have to eat better, I have to exercise more. So that's what the aql does. So the aql tells us to do that. So the things that will strengthen the forces of the aql, are given to us by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and his messenger in the Quran and in the Sunnah, right? So again, the things that attract us to the dunya are internal, right? And they are stronger than the things that attract you to the hereafter. And for that reason, we have to strengthen the forces of the aql, of the intellect. This is why, of course, one of the very first commands was iqra bismi rabbika alladhi khalaq. So then the author goes, فَأَمَّا الطَّبْعُ فَجَوَاذِبُهُ كَثِيرًا وَلَيْسَ الْعَجَبُ أَنْ يَغْلِبْ إِنَّمَا الْعَجَبُ أَنْ يُغْلَبْ. Right. So it says, so as for one's nature, right? So human nature, right? The things that attract, or the things which are part of our nature, which attract us to the dunya, are many, as mentioned before. So it's no wonder that our nature gets the best of us and it conquers us. He says that that's not a wonder. That's nothing to be amazed about when our nafs, it gets the best of us. What is amazing is that we actually conquer our nafs. That is something to be amazed about, not the opposite. Because again, the nafs inclines towards things which the body needs, or even perhaps the soul needs. But of course, we are supposed to do things in moderation, and there are limits, there are boundaries. But when we gain mastery over the nafs, that actually itself is actually something better. It actually is something, a cause for wonderment, when we find people who have good control, good self-control, right? Because the human being is a complex of thoughts, of emotions, of passion, right? And we have to begin with thoughts, right? So here, this is fundamentally what the author is doing. He said the khawatir is the point of beginning. The point, in other words, we have to get the right thoughts in our heads. And you're not going to get the right thoughts in your head if you're spending your time listening to a lot of garbage, listening to garbage music, looking at garbage television, listening to garbage talk, reading garbage talk online, right? So you're going to get the bad thoughts, the thoughts which are going to eventually lead to impulses, are going to lead to urges, are going to lead to resolve to do something, and then they're going to materialize in the world. And when they materialize, it's going to be catastrophic for the soul, and perhaps for you and for some other person, some innocent person, poor person in this world.